The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. You can support this podcast by visiting patreon.com/themurderinmyfamily. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for episode 49 of The Murder in My Family. If you find that you enjoy this podcast, please take a minute to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast, so that the show can continue to grow and reach new listeners. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @MurderInMyFam, or by searching for the Murder in My Family podcast on Facebook. If you'd like to support this show through a Patreon donation, it's always appreciated, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com/themurderinmyfamily. Benefits of supporting the show on Patreon include early access to ad-free episodes of the show, plus bonus content not heard in regular episodes. Support may also include thank you cards, stickers, and more. If you prefer to, you can also support the show through a PayPal donation by visiting paypal.me/themurderinmyfamily. In each episode, I'll give shoutouts to any new supporters. And thank you to all of the supporters that generously donate and help keep the show growing and improving. One last note. Please consider supporting any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family, the way that those sponsors support the show. It's with our sponsor support that this show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now on with the show. Cousins Elizabeth Collins and Lyric Cook disappeared in July 2012 while riding their bicycles in Evansdale, Iowa, a small community southeast of Waterloo. 5 months later, their bodies were found 20 miles away in a remote area at Seven Bridges Park. Although police didn't reveal the cause of death for the girls, they have declared that the girls were murdered, and their killer has never been found. Elizabeth Collins was born in Waterloo, Iowa on July 31st, 2003, to Drew and Heather Collins. She has a brother named Kelly and two sisters, Amber and Callie. She was a student at Pointer Elementary School in Evansdale. Elizabeth had a bubbly personality and enjoyed things like dressing up and having her hair and nails done. She loved singing, hockey, playing softball, and riding her bicycle. Lyric Cook was born in Waterloo, Iowa on October 2nd, 2001, to Dan and Misty Morrissey. And Lyric also had a brother named Dylan, who she was very close to. Lyric attended Kingsley Elementary School in Waterloo. She enjoyed playing outside, bowling, cheerleading, gymnastics, and card games with her grandmother. Family described Lyric as always smiling, saying she could light up any room that she walked into. Elizabeth's mother, Heather, and Lyric's mother, Misty, are sisters, and as cousins, Elizabeth and Lyric often played together. On July 13, 2012, Elizabeth and Lyric hopped on their bikes and went for a bike ride around Evansdale. The girls' grandmother saw them riding their bikes near downtown Evansdale at around 12:15 p.m. They were also seen at 12:23 p.m. on Broven Boulevard, and then again on Gilbert Drive near Myers Lake between 12:30 and 1 p.m. This was the last time the girls were seen alive. At 4 p.m., their bicycles and a purse belonging to Elizabeth were found on a trail near the southeast corner of Myers Lake, but Elizabeth and Lyric were nowhere to be found, and there were no clues indicating their whereabouts. Hundreds of volunteers showed up to search for the girls. FBI divers were called in to search Myers Lake, and they eventually drained part of it, but nothing was found. Trained bloodhounds from the FBI's Human Scent Evidence Team were brought in from the FBI headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. They were accompanied by agents from the FBI Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team. Authorities seized some evidence in the investigation and sent it off to the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation Crime Labs in Des Moines, Iowa. Police didn't say what the evidence was. They then went out and conducted hundreds of interviews and retrieved footage from local security cameras. The girls were spotted riding their bikes on one camera in an alley near Lafayette Road shortly before they disappeared. Within a few days of the girls going missing, police began investigating Lyric's parents, Dan and Misty, although they made it clear they weren't suspects. But both had criminal records going back several years. Starting in the 1990s, Dan had been convicted on numerous charges including drug possession and burglary. Not long before the girls vanished, he had been charged with assaulting Misty, and at the time of the disappearances, he had a restraining order against him prohibiting him to have contact with Misty. Around the time that the girls went missing, Dan also had meth charges pending against him, and he faced a long-term prison sentence if convicted. As is normal in these kinds of cases, police looked closely at those closest to the girls, which included their parents, and in this instance, police seemed especially interested in their checkered past. On May 30th, 2012, Misty was released from federal prison after being convicted of 9 crimes, which included excessive alcohol and illegal drug use, and failure to comply with drug testing. Misty also had convictions for conspiracy to manufacture and distribute methamphetamine, and had served a short time in prison for those charges. Despite their criminal past, both of Lyric's parents were given polygraph tests in their daughter's case, and evidently they both passed. Dan has since made it clear to the media that his past had nothing to do with his daughter's disappearance and subsequent murder. In November 2012, Iowa investigators revealed that a 40-year-old man named Sean Gant, who was incarcerated at Linn County Jail in Cedar Rapids, called the U.S. Attorney's Office in August and September and left messages claiming he knew where the girls were and that they would never be found. Police checked out Gant's claims, and they determined that he was lying about knowing where the girls' bodies were, and the lead proved to be a rabbit hole. Then on December 5th, 2012, hunters found the remains of 2 bodies in the Seven Bridges Wildlife Park near Redland in Bremer County, about 20 miles northeast of Evansdale. This is a very private and remote area. The hunters contacted police, who responded and retrieved the bodies. At a press conference the following day, Chief Deputy Rick Abbin with the Black Hawk County Sheriff's Office said he was confident the bodies were those of Elizabeth and Lyric because there were no other missing persons cases in that area. He added that the remains found were of a smaller size. Later, a medical examiner confirmed the girls' identities, and this was just the beginning of a new and sad chapter for the girls' families. As the families grieved for their daughters, the investigation into their murders ground on. 6 months later, on June 24, 2013, police announced that they had 3 witnesses who reported seeing a white, older model full-size SUV, similar to a Chevy Suburban, parked on Arbutus Avenue on July 13th, the day the girls went missing. The street connects to the Myers Lake Bike Trail where the girls' bikes were located. 2 of the witnesses said that they saw the vehicle parked between 2 bike trail signs, and all 3 witnesses said that they had seen the SUV between 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. It was around this time that investigators found a promising suspect named Michael James Clunder, who was 42 years old. On May 20th, 2013, Clunder kidnapped 15-year-old Kathleen Shepard and 12-year-old Desi Hughes from Dayton, Iowa. He took them to a hog confinement where he worked. Clunder then zip-tied the girls' hands and took Kathleen to another part of the property. When he did, Desi managed to escape and went for help. But when help arrived, it was too late. Both Clunder and Kathleen were gone. Kathleen's body was found on June 7, 2013 in the Des Moines River. Police quickly identified Clunder and found that he had a previous conviction for kidnapping and assault, and he had served about 20 years in prison from 1992 to 2011. Although he seemed like a promising suspect early on, by May of 2014, a representative from the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation said Clunder was no longer a suspect in the girls' murders. It was yet another roadblock for investigators. In July 2017, a 58-year-old man named Jeff Altmeyer was charged with trying to lure children in Jasper, Monona, and Grundy County by offering them $100 to get in his van. The previous November, he was accused of trying to lure a 6-year-old girl in his car near Ottawa. He was also a suspect in 2 other incidents. Local media reached out to police to ask if he was a suspect in Elizabeth and Lyric's murders, but all police would say was that he was one of their leads. In 2018, 36-year-old Teresa Gerlman stood in front of a train in Belle Plaine, Iowa. As the train got closer, she pulled her 8-year-old son onto the tracks with her, killing both of them instantly. Police found their bodies at 4:57 a.m. between the 8th and 9th Avenues railroad crossing. Prior to her death, police received a tip from a woman named Julie Croft, who had known Teresa. Julie told investigators that Teresa had in her possession a 6-page letter she kept in a box in her home. The letter was written by men she used to hang around with, and in the letter, the men admitted involvement in the Evansdale murders. Following Teresa's death, police searched her home, and on May 23, 2018, they seized a handwritten note, a spiral notebook, and 4 cell phones. Additionally, they seized 2 sealed letters. One was marked to Jeremiah from Henry, and another was marked to Phaedra from Henry. They also found the letter that Julie Croft had told them about. Police said the information Julie provided was information they already had, and that the documents seized from Teresa's home didn't yield any new evidence or clues. In the 7 years since the girls were murdered, there haven't been a lot of promising angles to pursue for police. One possibility that police did look into was that Lyric's and Elizabeth's murders might be related to the February 2017 murders of Liberty German and Abigail Williams in Delphi, Indiana, which is about 400 miles away from Evansdale. There were some similarities in the 2 sets of murders, but eventually, police ruled out any connection between the 2 cases. In the years following the horrific murders, the Evansdale community has found many ways of honoring Elizabeth and Lyric. The community started an annual memorial ride and drive for the girls in honor of those gone too soon. In 2018, the park at Myers Lake was renamed Angels Park in memory of Elizabeth and Lyric and others who lost their lives at a young age. The murders of Elizabeth Collins and Lyric Cook forever changed their community and altered the lives of their families. Elizabeth's father, Drew Collins, sat down with me to discuss how the murder of his daughter has weighed on him, and how it forever affected his life in ways he couldn't have imagined. That conversation is coming up in just a moment.
Hey, Mike.
Can you tell me a little bit about Elizabeth and what she was like, what kind of person she was?
Oh, she was just really bubbly and sweet. She was like a really good big sister. She took her 2 little sisters, did everything with her, and she liked animals, and she was a good student, but she liked to talk a lot. She was very bubbly and very, I would say, like, she liked to joke around and play. She was very playful and joking, and just a very good kid. Just, really, she's so young. When she was gone, she was only 8, so we only had 8 years with her. But yeah, I mean, she was kind of the center of. Well, we have an older son. He's a couple years older than her, but she seemed to be like kind of the middle of everything. You know, she was just very outgoing personality. Yeah, just very sweet.
And how close were Elizabeth and Lyric? Did they spend a lot of time together?
They were always together. They would, Heather's, my ex-wife's mom would babysit them, and they would fight all day. And then they would, at the end of the day, they would be like, can Lyric spend the night? We had like gone through a whole day of them arguing, you know. But, you know, in the end, they were very close, like probably more like sisters, because we had Lyric for a while when her parents were away. We had her here, and her brother Dylan too for a while before all this happened. They were more like sisters, I would say. Very, very close.
As a parent, did you feel safer that Elizabeth was out doing things with Lyric as opposed to being out on her own or by herself?
Well, no, because I wouldn't let her just go out for bike rides. That wasn't something I would allow her to do. But that day, her grandma let her do it. And this is what happens, I guess. Even two kids, that young shouldn't be out alone. I don't feel, especially in an isolated area, and no one knowing really where they're at, where they're going. Just like a blink, hey, we're going for a bike ride, isn't really good enough. And even with two kids, we've seen, as rare as it is, we've seen that, they do get taken in pairs too. So I don't really feel safe. I never really feel safer with her, even out of my sight, because she was too little. She rode her bike outside. We would just sit on the porch. We live in a small town. She could just ride up and down the street, but we were watching her. But I would never let her go on bike rides like that.
If you would, take us back to that day in July 2012 when the girls went missing. How did that day unfold for you?
Well, we had a storm the night before, and my dentist I do trees. I'm a tree man, and my dentist had a limb come down. He called me, I can't remember, either late Thursday night or early Friday morning. So it was still kind of wet, but we went out early and did that tree, and then I sent my crew home because it was Friday and it was wet. And so I just sent everybody home after they had that job done. And then I just went up. I do mostly bids and, the business side of it. So I had different bids to do, and I went, hit a couple different places that I like, both of my saw shops and then just some other businesses. And I was getting a car painted that day. So at about, I want to say noon or so, I stopped at this body shop called Diamonds, which is about, 2 football fields away maybe, to check on my car. And we were just kind of looking over the car, and I think I went home there maybe close to 1. A little while, I was in my office, and a little while later, Heather, my ex-wife, came in and said the girls went for a bike ride and they haven't got home yet, and she was starting to get worried. And I just thought, they probably just went and stopped at one of Elizabeth's friends or something like that. But Heather kind of was like, no, I think there's something wrong. So she called the police, and the police came over, and they have an initial search. They'll go through the house just to make sure their kid's not hiding or sleeping somewhere. And then after that, it kind of was like, okay, this is getting serious. So we started driving around looking for them. I want to say 3:30 or 4, they found their bikes, and the police came and got me and took me down to where the bikes were found. So we found the 2 bikes on this trail on the other side of this lake in Evansdale here. And then it's like a tunnel almost. There's like fence on both sides of it and trees on both sides of it. And it was full, the leaves were all on them, on the trees and stuff. So it almost made like a tunnel through there. And it's right up against the highway. You couldn't really see down in there much. But the Elizabeth's purse and phone was thrown over the fence towards the lakeside. And, as soon as I saw that, I knew something really bad happened. It just looked bad. So we just that kind of started everything. And people went out searching that night. And we kind of went into, getting different, the DCI and FBI involved. Because Evansdale is very small. And when this kind of thing happens, it depletes. They just throw all their resources at it. They have a kid missing, whatever police department or people are looking into it, they just throw everything at it. And, we depleted in this small town. We only have a few cops, so we needed help. Waterloo is right next to us. We ended up at the chief of police in Waterloo in the middle of the night, met us there, and he called DCI and the FBI in. Yeah, that was pretty much the first day.
How did you react when that first day turned into more days and then weeks and months? How did you cope with not knowing what had happened or where they were at?
Well, I mean, that's horrible, not knowing where your kid is, and you don't know what's happening to them. You don't know if they're hungry, if somebody's doing bad things to them, if they're dead, if they're alive, if they're being trafficked. We didn't have any clue. So it's pretty much it for me. All these different things are running through my head and over. And, the days turn to weeks and weeks to months. And it's just, I don't know. It's a living hell, man. I always say it's like you're sitting in your house, everything's calm and it's like a semi drives through your house. There's not any aspect of your life when you lose a kid like this. There's no aspect of your life that it doesn't really affect, because it cuts you all the way to the bone. It's your baby. Your baby's missing. Your niece is missing. And, we went 5 months not knowing. But I know a lot of people have gone longer, but I don't know how they do it. 5 months was a living hell. And now it's like a continuation of that. It's like we still don't have answers, and we want to find out who did this, so they can't do this to somebody else.
How hard was it getting that news in December when the girls' bodies were found?
Same thing, man. It's like the life gets sucked out of you. They called us into the city hall, and then family started showing up. When I saw the Evansdale chief of police, his name was Kent Smock. When I saw his face, I knew. You could tell he was extremely upset. So then they came in and they told us they showed us some pictures of some shoes. Then they said, well, these are the shoes, and we're with them. And then it took like 3 days, I think, for the DNA we knew from the shoes pretty much, and the police knew. But then they had to get it confirmed. It took a few days. But yeah, I don't know. It just zaps the life out of you. There's no really way to describe it. I've never felt the pain and like that before, ever.
It's one thing to lose a child, but another thing altogether, I assume, to know that they were abducted and murdered. How, as a parent, did you process that part of it?
Well, I tell you what, I do a lot of counseling. I do lots of counseling. I have 2 different counselors I go to. And, one of the ways that I think when you have nothing to do, which, you, as a dad, I don't know if you've got kids, but if you're a dad, you want to fix things. And so I got involved. I'm a volunteer now for missing and exploited children. So I tried, and then I help other families in the area that have missing people. So, I mean, that kind of helps. Plus the counseling. I have a regular counselor, then a Christian counselor that I meet with every other week. I meet with one week, one the other. But when it was going on, it was like both of them every week. So I got a lot of counseling, and then the helping others, for me, that made me feel like I was doing something, because the police, they don't give you any information on your case, and they just tell you to wait. And you don't want to just sit around I don't want to sit around and just do nothing. And so I guess I kind of tried as my best to turn it around, and using something terrible that happened to try to help other people that are going through it. So when the parent calls the center for missing children, they'll ask the parent if you want somebody to talk to that's been through it. Some people say no, some people say yeah, and then they just match us up with different parents from all over the country, and we kind of talk them through it. Most of them are runaways or parental. Very, very few are like our case. And that's kind of how I dealt with it, and everyone has kind of dealt. My ex-wife dealt with it a completely different way, and Dan and Misty, Lyric's mom and dad, they dealt with it their way. But everyone just kind of did it their own way, really. No one really, I don't think anyone grieves the same. It's a marriage killer. Like, my marriage was great before this all happened, but just the way I handled things differently than my wife at the time. You kind of you're growing one way, trying to make sense of a senseless situation, and she's doing the same a different way. And so you grow apart, and, our family, isn't the same. Like, really, we had a normal family, mom, dad, and 4 kids, and that's just over now. It's a long process, and it's not over. I mean, I don't think it ends. I think it's just something you're just constantly thinking about, trying to figure out why and who would have done it. And you see people, like, on the streets. I'm from a small town, and they're saying the police are like, it's probably somebody local. So you see people around that maybe you find strange, and you think, God, I wonder if that's the person.
Did you find yourself doing that, looking around and saying, I wonder if that person is the person that did this? And
I'm doing that
having
today.
Just suspicion?
I do that today.
So that part doesn't go away.
No, I don't think it will till I know who did it. And then I don't know what it's going to be like. It may, after hearing what they went through, it might be worse. I don't know what happened. They haven't told me anything that happened to them. It's just, I'm sure they know, but they're not telling me.
Is it that the girl's cause of death couldn't be determined, or because the police just chose not to release it?
They would not release it.
And maybe, as a parent, that's something that you don't want to know?
I battle with that, too. And it's crazy, because, like, every day it seems like I don't know, it's like when I'm going through this, like, I go from here to there in a second. Sometimes I think, I don't want to leave that courtroom, because I want that person to see what I have to see. I want them to see my face and see what he's done. But then on the other hand, I have met other people that have gone through this, and they tell me, don't listen. When they go to that part, just leave, because it'll kill you. So I don't know what I'm going to do if they ever, we don't know if it's ever going to be solved.
As the years went by, without answers, without someone being arrested, how did you keep up hope that the person might be caught? Or is it something that did you start to lose hope that there'd be an arrest?
You go through cycles where, for a while, I do. It's like it's a roller coaster. Like, sometimes I have lost hope, and then I'm pretty outgoing with what I'm doing. I've gone and visited some experts in the field. When I came home from that, I was kind of fired back up, and I had hope again. And then, like, I'm just coming out of, it was just Elizabeth's 16th birthday this summer. So, I honestly haven't left my room much this summer. I isolate. I stay in my room a lot, just because you go out, say if I go out or something, somebody's always, wants to talk to you about it or tell you what they think happened. And, you're trying to go out and just maybe hang out with your friends and forget about things for a while. And somebody wants to come up and talk about it. So that's kind of what I do. I'm an isolator. It's up and down though. So, like, right now I feel like I'm kind of coming out of that, but this summer was hard because we had the anniversary of when they were taken, and 2 weeks later was Elizabeth's 16th birthday. And you just think, okay, what would she be doing now? What would she look like? That's twice as old as she was when she, and when she left, she was 8, now she's 16. So it's like, what would she be like what would she look like? What would she be doing? And you see like her friends, they're in high school now, and you see their posts on Facebook, what they're doing. So it kind of makes you, it's a roller coaster. It's the best way I could describe it is, it's just ups and downs and turns and curves. And, sometimes, you hear, I hear things that, you think sound good, but don't pan out. And so your hopes are up and then down because, it wasn't that. Kind of how it is, man. It's hold on. If your kid's taken, hold on.
It sounds like some different peaks and valleys, for you over the years.
Yeah, I do some stuff that I like to do that makes it better. Like I go to a ride in Utica for missing children every year, and we raise money for the Poster Distribution Center. So when a kid goes missing, if his parents want flyers, they send them flyers free of charge. Posters is put up. And I guess that kind of stuff, makes me feel like I'm doing something and helping somebody. And those are when I usually when I come back from one of those events, it kind of rejuvenates me and I have some strength for a while. And then, also the helping, I had a person tonight and, one of my, people that had a missing child, and I called her tonight to check in, and she had found her daughter, and her daughter was home. That gets me pumped up. That kind of renews my strength too. Anything that I can do that's positive, I try to do. I try not to say no to anything that'll bring attention to the case, because cases, people forget after a while. They move on. Not that they don't care, but other things happen. Like other cases come up and other things, tragedies happen. It's been 7 years, so I try to keep it going as much as possible. We do a motorcycle ride to raise money for Crime Stoppers, and we actually made an island park for some missing and kids that were murdered in the area. That's beautiful.
Those kind of things that you do and the work helping other families, is that somewhat therapeutic for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I get the other thing about it is like we train together, all the families that are doing this, people that are doing it, we train together, and, we we really lean on each other. Some of the people that I volunteer with have never found their children. Some have found their children. Some of the stories are horrible, and you just hear some of these stories, and it's hard to listen to, but you realize that other people are going through it too. Some of them have been through worse, and they're still standing, and they're doing something positive. So that gives me hope. But anything like that, I try to do. I have so much time where I'm doing nothing because, like I said, I isolate. And that's the worst thing for you. But you don't feel like doing anything. You just don't. I don't feel like doing a whole lot, even now. But I do like doing that stuff.
And you mentioned it being therapeutic. How often are you able to do that stuff? Is that something you do on a regular basis?
Yeah, I try to. There's a couple cases in my area. I try to check on those parents. A lot of them, there's a few that are older cases. And there's a few that are happened since my daughter's case, I should say. I try to go out of my way to meet them and talk to them and just know that there's somebody else going through it too. And because some people handle it well, and some people they either fall into a bottle or drugs or whatever, because it's too much for a person to go through and handle. You can't do it yourself. I think if you try, you just prolong your misery. If you don't go and talk to somebody and get help, and do something positive, I think it'll eat you up. I think everybody reacts different and handles it different. And also, I think everyone kind of takes things in differently. But I have a clue of what they're going through, but I don't know what they're going through. I know what I went through, and so I can take what I went through, and it's easy for me to relate to somebody that's lost a child. Somebody I talked to that's kid overdosed. A 22-year-old kid overdosed, and I talk to him regularly just because I know he's going through that. I never want to say that I know what somebody's going through because I can't really, I don't know that I do. But I have a damn good idea.
But I guess everybody's experience is different in their own way.
And then, there's so many different factors to it. I mean, there's people, that some people have a great faith and they can endure more than another person that's maybe not as strong. So I think it's definitely ugly for everyone, but it's different for everyone, I believe. I would never tell. I know how you feel.
Because that you may not know how they feel, even though you've gone through a similar experience.
Yeah.
What advice would you give as somebody that's gone through this to any other family that's finding themselves in this situation? Is there any advice you would bestow upon them?
Yeah. I would say first off, completely cooperate with the police. And even though it may, people take it personal, don't take it personal. Cooperate fully with the police. Do exactly what they say so they can get through you and get done with you and get on to something else. If there's some parents out, I'm not going to take the lie detector, or, those are red flags for the police. And, you may just not want to take the stupid thing or the DNA test or whatever, but, do it. Just do what they tell you to do. Don't lie. Do what they tell you to do, and let them get done with you so they can start interviewing other people. And the other thing is, I would always suggest somebody having a family advocate speak for them if they don't feel like speaking, because there's times that you're not going to feel like speaking. Have a family advocate that can talk for you on those hard days that you just don't feel like you can do it. Just so you keep the story out there. And that's the other thing. Keep the story going. Do whatever you can. Don't give up on finding who did it or what happened to your child. Never give up. Try to keep hope. And, that's the thing that we do at Missing and Exploited. It's called Team Hope. That's what the group I belong to there. And that's kind of our thing is just to keep hope, because, the worst thing in the world is to be hopeless and to have no hope. So until they tell you something's happened, I would say keep the hope. We have a lot of cases that long-term missing are found. You got the Cleveland case. There's been a lot of other cases where the kid's been taken for quite a while, and they end up coming back later. So I just think not giving up, and then for marriages, I think right away get into single counseling, and then right away get into, like, say your wife is getting counseling and you're getting counseling separately, and then get counseling together, because this will tear apart even a good marriage. It'll tear it apart. And my marriage was great. I was married for almost 20 years, and until this happened, my marriage was awesome. And this pretty much took that away as well. The divorce rate is so high for people with murdered children. It's like in a 90 percentile or something. So that'd be a few things. And then be careful who you're talking to. Psychics will get your hopes up and down, and they'll have you looking in crazy places. And when your kid's missing, you'll believe anything. You're just looking for any kind of hope. So stay away from stay away from the psychics. Because, I had so many psychics coming at us. I had one psychic tell me that my daughter was in a cage in a basement, and only thing that was in the cage, she saw a Snicker bar. Just crazy stuff. I mean, you don't want to tell that to a parent. And as a parent, you don't need to hear that. So I'd say be careful who you talk to. And you can have that family advocate person kind of be a buffer between you and anybody that wants to talk to you. And then that person, you can tell this person, listen, I don't want to talk to anybody. So or I don't want to talk to these people. I don't want to, I don't want to talk to any psychics. And then that person can be the bad guy and say, hey, he just doesn't want to talk.
So it sounds like some sound advice that, you could have somebody on your team that can help weed through some of that stuff that's going to be painful for you, or get you worked up, or give you some kind of hope that reignites his emotions and stuff.
Yeah.
Where does the case stand today for Elizabeth and Lyric? Are the police still actively investigating? Are they giving you updates as to what's going on now in 2019?
They don't tell me what they're doing. They do tell me that they meet. Sometimes they'll meet. They'll work that, because they have other cases that have started. So there's other cases that have come up, and so they have other cases they're working. Our particular DCI, I've been into the office, and they have a room that's dedicated to the girls, and they have like a big table in there, and the different agencies that are working the case meet there once a month, and then I got a couple detectives working the case from DCI, and they might work the case 3 days a week or 2 days a week, or sometimes if they're getting a bunch of tips or something, they might work it all week. It just depends on what they have to do, which things are running down, and they don't really tell me exactly what they're doing. They just kind of say, hey, we're working it. Just don't worry. Trust us. We're going to get it. And really that's kind of good that they keep everything close, because I don't want whoever did do this, when they do catch them, I don't want them to get out on some stupid technicality.
Is your ultimate goal, let's say, hopefully you get answers sooner rather than later, but let's say decades went by and you finally found out who did this, but they had died. Is your goal to find out just who did it, or just to know, or ultimately would you want to see justice done and see them punished for what they did?
Well, I know what this did to my family, and I just don't understand how you could look at an 8-year-old child like Elizabeth and Lyric and want to harm them. Whoever it is sick. They are definitely sick. They're not normal. They're not right. They need to be stopped. I don't want another victim from this. That's kind of been my biggest fear, is that whoever did this would do it again. I don't want that to happen to another family, because I'm telling you, it's hell.
And as if somebody's sick enough to do that one time, it seems like they wouldn't hesitate to do it more than once.
If they'll do that, what won't they do? What won't that person do? They'll do anything. If you'll kill an 8-year-old beautiful child and an 11-year-old beautiful child, what won't you do? Normal people, if a normal person sees a kid in distress, they don't even know, they're going to try to help that kid because it's a kid. Normal people don't think like, oh, I want to take this kid and hurt him. It's not a normal thought. That's not how we're wired. We're wired to protect our kids. And these people are messed up. Whoever does it, people that do this stuff, there's no fixing them. A lot of them, they started out molesting, and then they go to jail, and then they refine. Jail is like college for these guys. And then they protect the pedophiles in jail. And then they let them out to give them another chance, and what do? That Michael Klunder guy kidnapped 2 3-year-old kids. He didn't kill them. He threw them in a dumpster in the middle of the winter to die. And they let him back out. And then he kidnapped another woman, and raped her. This is somebody that's a sadist. That's what I would call him. He wasn't a normal person. He should have never been on the streets. I kind of feel like the system failed us with him. He didn't do our crime, but I still feel like the system failed us when they let somebody like that go. And that guy had mental issues. He went from high school. He was in the mental institutions, from one mental institution to this boy's home to a mental institution. I mean, he should have been locked up. But these people want to give these guys another chance. And it's not fair to the rest of us to have to live in fear and our kids not be able to play, our kids not be able to have when I was a kid, I ran free. Didn't have to worry so much. A little bit. I was in Des Moines when Johnny Gosh was taken as a kid. I remember that well. So we were scared after that, but for the most part, we felt pretty safe. And the kids don't feel safe today. There's so many of these guys, and it's a cancer. It just grows because these guys, they may have, before they're caught, they may have 40 or 50 victims. And then how many of those victims are going to, when they grow up, victimize somebody? And then how many of those people are going to victimize this? So it just like grows like a cancer. And these idiots that are in power think that can change. If you can't take that away you can't take that out of somebody. That's what they like. They see a kid.
I think a lot of us as parents, I have kids myself that are in that age range. And, I talk about so much of this stuff on a regular basis with people that I've heard so many horror stories that I'm very protective. And because of this kind of stuff, because of what happened to Lyric and Elizabeth, I don't let my kids out of my sight. And you have to, it seems like it's a challenge to balance letting them live their lives, but protecting them. But with those kind of people out there that you're talking about, you can't blame anybody that is afraid to let their kids go out.
And, and I still have 2 kids at home, 2 little girls, and we don't know who did this. My girls live in fear. And I live in fear. My son lives in fear because this person's still out there. They're not caught. There's still that fear. That's a local guy. We think it's a local person. Well, okay, then this guy's still in our community. It's very scary.
It's not like a stranger came through and did this and just went on his way. It's even worse, possibly, that the person's still there in your community hiding.
We don't know. Yeah. It's all up in the air. We don't know if it's somebody that's gone now or if it's somebody that just did that and then they kind of just went back into their life and they're living a normal life and they just got this huge monster in the closet, and that monster's eventually going to get out again.
And how did the community react? You mentioned that your family lives in fear somewhat. Has the rest of your community sort of been taking the same reaction that there's somebody possibly walking among them that did this?
Oh yeah. There's definitely, I talk to people all the time and they're like, how could this happen? Is this, how come they can't catch this guy? I don't let my kids, I'm just like what you said. I don't let my kids out of my sight. Today I went to the grocery store and I came home and even in the driveway, they're not out front without me out front. We all unloaded the groceries together and I don't leave them outside alone for a second because this guy's still out there and it could be my neighbor.
And that's what the shame is, that you have to protect your kids like that because there are people out there roaming the streets that are capable of this. Do you know if the police have DNA in the case?
They never told me if they had any DNA. I mean, they took our DNAs, but it was way before they were even found. They took everybody's DNA, but I don't know. They really, really don't tell anything about the case. The investigators are very, very careful, and they just don't talk about it. If I ask them something, they'll just say, Drew, we can't answer that. I wish I could, but I can't. So, I mean, I've gotten to the point where I pretty much know what I can and can't ask, and I can't ask a whole lot. So it's kind of frustrating, but at the same time, it's later on, it's going to be better for the case that some of the stuff didn't get out. It'll be easier for them to solve once they do get a suspect, I think, that the stuff wasn't released.
And you mentioned that you've been trying to keep the case in light shined on it, not let it be forgotten. Have you done anything as far as like creating websites or Facebook pages or anything like that for the girls?
There's been a couple Facebook pages. I try to stay off there because for me, anybody can sit in their mom's basement and say whatever they want about you. So I try to stay off of those because, people have said some nasty things. I just stay off there because it's negative for me. We do a motorcycle ride, usually around the 13th of July. And if you go online and look up Angels Island in Evansdale, Iowa, you'll see we built an island out at the lake where the bikes were found, and it's got other kids that were taken and murdered out there as well. We kind of made it not just about our girls, but everyone. And so I keep it out that way. And then we do a Child Safety Day every year with the money we raise. Part of the money we raise goes to Crime Stoppers for reward money on other cases or tips for anything. And then the other part we donate to the island. And then the lady that kind of runs that, Donna Frickson, she puts together that Child Safety Day, and they have all sorts of things to do with different things about child safety. And we do DNA kits and fingerprint kits, just anything to do with child safety. It kind of brings everything back up. Usually the press comes out and they'll talk to us. And so it just kind of keeps the story going. And our local newscaster, he's kind of a bit into this and he's not letting it go. So he just keeps it out there. He just tells me, anything you're doing, Drew, just call me. And I'll try to get it out there so we can keep it going.
Well, it's good to have allies in the fight to help you out to keep the case out in the spotlight.
Yeah. Everyone in our communities, because everyone has nieces and nephews and kids. Who doesn't? It's really, if anything, brought the community together. And, they've been very supportive. That goes a long way too.
Well, hopefully that the next thing we hear in the case is that there's been somebody arrested and they'll face justice going to trial, and then you can hopefully get the answers that you've been waiting for. If there's anybody out there listening to this podcast now that has information or thinks they might be able to help, who should they contact?
Cedar Valley Crime Stoppers, and then there's our Iowa Missing Girls, which is like it'll be a direct email to the detectives. Either one of those.
We'll be sure to put those in the notes so people can find those easily, and if they have information, hopefully come forward with it and share it.
That's awesome.
Drew, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this case, and I know it's been a long, hard road for you, and I really hope that you get the answers that you've been waiting for, that you deserve.
We will. I know it'll come. It's just how long it's going to be. So just kind of keep the hope going and keep it out there. And I think it'll, people's relationships change. This person that did it might have a girlfriend that knows something and they might break up, or a friend that knows something and they might get in an argument. I'm hoping for anything, just to get them the door cracked, I guess. So just a little crack in the door so the police have a direction to go in.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. I'd like to thank Debbie Buck at TrueCrimeDiva.com for writing and research assistance in this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please introduce a friend of the podcast and invite them to listen. As we wrap up this episode, I'd like to invite you to listen to a preview of a new true crime podcast that I think you'll really like. It's called Dark, Dark World. Be sure to give it a listen. And before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.
Hi there. I'm the host of a new true crime podcast called Dark, Dark World. With Dark, Dark World, we explore lesser-known killers and crimes, stories that have slipped between the cracks of the mainstream true crime consciousness. My name is Jordan Crittenden. Join me as I explore this dark, dark world by subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts.